Hello, everybody. This is Don Markland with Accountability Now, and welcome to the Morning Jolt, where we give you small tidbits of data, information, and inspiration to make better decisions today. It's a tactical podcast about making today better today. I love June. June, it's the start of summer. It's the start of, sunshine and all these fun things. And I do something every June where I read one of two books, sometimes both of them. I read either The Adventures of Tom Sawyer or The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And I've done this for well over a decade. I think this is year either 14 or 15 where I've done this. In 1876, author Sam Clemens, better known as Mark Twain, he published The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and put his mark on the literary map of the world. Tom Sawyer, it's a novel that was really ahead of its time. It's filled with meaning, symbolism, Americanism, spirit, and in my opinion, it's really engaging and fun to read. And those of you that are not familiar with Tom Sawyer, it tells the tale of this mischievous young boy that could really trick his way into any and everything. And this would later be told to modern audiences of kind of my generation in the likes of Dennis the Menace, or maybe even Home Alone, right, if you're familiar with that. And I love this book, and I've loved it since I was very young. And like I said, it's on my annual reading list, which is why I'm talking about it now. It reminds me of growing up in my small town of Nephi, Utah, where we didn't lock our doors. We rode our bikes every summer. We hung around at the creek, or as we called it, the crick. We would listen to Rush Rush by Paula Abdul on our boomboxes, and we didn't seem to have a care in the world. Tom Sawyer reminds me of home. And this is not a literary podcast where we discuss literature. In some ways, I wish it was. That's probably a dream of mine. But I want to relate this to entrepreneurship and business and leadership. And one of the lessons from Tom Sawyer is so prominent to me. I talk about it in a lot of my coaching practices, and I'm going to bring it up now. One of the most prominent scenes in the book is the infamous fence scene, where Tom was asked by his Aunt Polly to whitewash their fence as punishment for prior mischief, where he had played hooky and ditched out on school the day before and lied about it. Saturdays were the greatest days of the week back in Tom's day, and in fact, that's with students even today, where all week they're bogged down by the burdens of school, and Saturdays meant freedom. And so if he had lied, Aunt Polly wanted to do the maximum punishment possible. So for Tom's crime, she sentenced him to hours of work on Saturday painting the fence in front of Tom's free friends who could torment him. This would be torture indeed. And this is where one of the book's greatest lessons takes place. Many people, when faced with punishment, do one of two things. They might take their licks, do their work, and get it over with as quick as possible. Others might kick and scream. Not Tom. He finds a way to make even this misery, this crisis, into the greatest gift he's ever received. Tom not only turns the situation around, but he turns it into gold into his hands. How does he do it? He remembers this principle: never let a crisis go to waste. Now you think about that in the present pandemic or noise in the area that you're dealing with. Never let a crisis go to waste. Mark Twain says in the book, quoting Tom, "Work consists of whatever a body is obliged to do. Play consists of whatever a body is not obliged to do." I've learned in my coaching practice that so many people grow to have a negative sentiment in the work they do. They tend to view their work primarily as a source of income, a transactional means to put food on the table, or simply a roof over their heads. From that standpoint, work becomes a, quote, have to, or rather a requirement of living, and a demand upon them rather than a choice or an option. Further, others take a step even farther and look at work as like a cross to bear. They see work as a punishment. Now, let me be clear, even those that love their job, like me, I love my job. I work with 4 different businesses, not to mention being a father, a husband, involved with my church. But there are pieces of all of those things that I don't love. There are elements that are mundane and frustrating. But you can still love your work. In a recent Gallup study, 2/3 of Americans are not engaged in their work, meaning they feel no real connection to their jobs. They do the bare minimum. In addition, 16% of U.S. Workers are actively disengaged, or they resent their jobs. Is that you? Engaged workers make a far more better work environment. And that's what Tom did when he took on this crisis of painting the fence. And let me explain how he did it. Ben Rogers, one of Tom's best friends, came sidling by as Tom began his work. And he instantly started to tease Tom about the paint that he had to put on and the work that he had to do. And rather than give in, Tom simply leaned into his brush, began to whistle and engage ever more. He smiled and brushed ever harder. And Ben started to tease him more about the work that he had to do, and Tom happily replied, "What work?" and proceeded to paint the fence with surgeon-like precision, checking each and every paint stroke like Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel. This started to perplex Ben, and he started to get curious, like, what is Tom doing? Why is this so important to him? And it started to frustrate Ben, and he started to be perplexed. I mean, his entire Saturday was ruined. Why was Tom so focused? Ben persisted in his torment, but Tom simply responded, "I don't see why I'd be frustrated. You don't get to do this every day," acting as if he had been given the greatest of assignments and only Tom himself were capable of completing it. Here, Tom becomes a genius. He goes all in and engaged with his painting, up and down with every single stroke, with dedicated poise. Ben, who at this point is completely perplexed, yet completely mesmerized by what he's witnessing by his friend Tom, couldn't help but ask, "Tom, let me paint a little." Now Tom, ever the psychological genius, employs a sales tactic called the takeaway and continues. He says, "You know, Ben, only 1 in 1,000, maybe even 2,000 boys can do this. Aunt Polly says, only I can do this." Now, this line is actually facetious. Aunt Polly never said that. But Ben couldn't resist the urge that he wasn't allowed to do it, and now starts to offer to pay Tom to let him paint. He offers up his apple. He first offers up his core, and then later offers up his whole apple in exchange to work for him. And so it goes, and he had him hooked. On and on, one boy after another as they came down the path, and Tom rouged them all into completing his work for him all Saturday long. And it was a thrill. By the end, Tom ends up with all sorts of treasure for his hard work. 12 marbles, a dead rat on a string, a blue bottle piece of glass, a spool cannon, a key that wouldn't unlock, a piece of chalk, a tin soldier, tadpoles, firecrackers, a cat with one eye, on and on and on and on and on. In today's dollars, with inflation, it's somewhere around $40 to $50. I try to do the math. The lesson, Tom didn't let a crisis go to waste. He kept his head. He took advantage of the opportunity, and he made profit from it. As it says in the book, to make a person covet a thing, it is only necessary to make the thing difficult to attain. For most individuals, they will not value the work that they do as much as they would if they get two things. Number one, intellectual currency. It has to be challenging on a regular basis. And second, value currency. It has to be valuable to themselves and the organization. If you feel yourself lacking, if you feel yourself unengaged, number one, make your work intellectually currency. Make it challenging for yourself. And two, find the value. Find the value for someone else. Find the value for the organization. Don't let this crisis go to waste. It doesn't mean your work cannot be difficult or miserable. Every job has parts of it that are not pleasant. Painting of the fence wouldn't be fun. In sales, there's parts of it that are not fun. Prospecting is not fun. If you're a leader, there are parts that are not fun. I was talking to a client just this morning about the loneliness of leadership. There will be mundane and difficult parts of every single job. But you can find the value, you can learn the lessons, and learn from it. And when you do this, you will become like those who we see every day that make success look easy, just like Tom Sawyer did. And if Tom Sawyer, this genius, realized this 150 years ago, what's your excuse? If you want more content, please, first, leave a review, like and subscribe this on Apple or Spotify. You can follow me on Forbes. You can follow me on Twitter at Don Markland or Instagram, executivecoach.don, or my website, accountabilitynow.net. And as always, check out my company, the greatest digital marketing agency in the world, 411 Locals. And this is your Morning Jolt.